Hi, I'm Danny from figandfarmathome.com, and today we're making pillows. I'm going to be doing a front porch Christmas makeover, and it's time to redo my pillows. So this is what we're going to be making, a different pattern. And what you're going to notice is that this is an envelope enclosed pillowcase. So we're not going to fuss with zippers, and if you know how to sew a straight line, then you're in luck, you're going to know how to sew a pillow. So the reason I like these is because they are super easy to make and they're really not fussy. You can just take them off and throw them in the wash. So before we get started, I measured my pillow, and you want to know the measurement of your pillow. This is kind of awkward. It's like 17 by 19. You always want to round down, and we're going to talk about that in each of the steps. But I do want to talk about the fabric you're going to use. If they're outdoor pillows, you should use an outdoor like treated fabric. But if they're indoors, I really like to use things that are like a little bit thicker. This is an old pair of curtains, and I'm gonna just repurpose that. It's either donate it or repurpose it, and this is perfect for my job today. And we're gonna embellish it with a little bit of flannel to make it Christmassy, and then I have quite a bit left, so we're going to turn this into a blanket also. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so we're here in my studio and we're getting ready to cut the fabric. And when I measured the pillow, I had mentioned that I measured 17 by 19, and I know that that's not a standard pillow size, so I'm going to assume that over the years of it being outside, it kind of got smushed a little bit. So we're going to go with an 18 by 18 inch pillow. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure the fabric to be height and then width. So I'm going to measure 18 inches long or tall. And then we're going to talk about the width, because that's the little bit of a tricky part. So I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to measure it 18 inches, and I'm going to cut it, and then we'll have one long strip before we measure the width, okay? Okay, so I have my height measured at 18 inches, and now I need to measure my width. So if I were to take this out, I mean, you would see that I have way too much fabric. Now you'll notice too that when I measured my pillow, I said it was an 18 by 18, and I cut as high as the pillow was. I didn't leave any room for seam allowance, and that's on purpose, because what you'll notice is when you see this pillow, so I made this one too, it's a snug fit. It feels like the pillow fits the pillowcase, and that's not always the case, and I really like to make it feel snug. So you are going to cut the height of your pillow, whatever that is. If it's 18, 20, 16, whatever it is, mine is 18. And now we're going to do the wraparound part. The part that's going to wrap around the pillow and then allow enough space to overlap to make that envelope enclosure. So I know that it's 18 in front, it's 18 in back, and then I need some more. So 18 times 2 is 36. I'm going to add 10. And 10 is kind of a safe number to add. So to add enough room for a seam allowance and to go over. So I'm going to cut it at 46 inches, and then we'll get started sewing. Okay, I've cut it at 46 inches, and now what I like to do is I like to, before I start sewing the hems, I like to just double check to make sure that I have enough space. So I have this this cutting mat, and I've had it for years because I used it in my baby business. And this is super helpful, but you don't need that at all. You can just use a tape measure. But this is really helpful when you make pillows and you make them as often as I do, because I use the edges of here and a straight ruler in order to help me really get the idea of how big I need it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up almost as if I'm creating my pillow now. I'm folding it at the 1 inch mark, and then I am taking my straight ruler and I'm putting it at the 18 inch mark, which is how big I want my pillow to be, and I'm folding it over. So yep, that fits just fine. There is quite a bit of overlap here, and that's okay because I'm gonna allow at least 1 inch for a hem here and a hem here. So what we're going to do is we're going to prepare these now for sewing. And I'm not going to iron my fabric right now because once I make my hem, I'm going to pin it in place. Once I make my hem, before I sew it, I'm going to go iron it so that it will be nice and crisp. So let me grab my pins. And I just kind of eyeball it really because I have so much extra fabric. I would guess this is about a 1/2 inch, maybe a little bit more. And you can do a little bit of a crease with your fingers to keep it in place, but I am making sure that it's straight when I fold it over. And it kind of folds a little bit like paper. Sometimes if it's thicker fabric, it won't do that. But you can see that it has kind of stayed there. So sometimes I don't even pin it. I just take it right to the ironing board. But today I'll pin it. So I'm gonna fold it over once, and then to make it look like it's that polished, finished edge, I'm gonna fold it over again. And I'm going to pin this time. And I'm going to do that on both. So I have 2 pillowcases ready to go. They're cut 18 by 46, and they're both hemmed or pinned, ready to be sewn. But I'm playing with this flannel a little bit, and I really kind of like the idea of it being big as my embellishment. But I wanted to show you one thing you can do. It's a quick tip. It means just straight sewing, not making another hem. But sometimes if you let the edge be frayed, you can see how that's a little bit frayed. If you let it be frayed and you just sew along the inside and let that fray sit on the outside, you don't have to hem it again. So let me show you how to get that fray. It doesn't require putting it in the wash again, though that is one way you can do it. You just want to take the last thread going, whatever edge you're going on, the last thread, oopsie, and you want to remove it. It's a little tricky to locate. Got it. And I'm just going to pull that out all the way down. If it breaks, I can pick it up where it breaks off. And I don't want a huge fray, so this is maybe a 1/4 inch, and I think that's good. And so I'm going to then do it on each side. So maybe removing, depends on you and what you like, but sometimes 4 lines of thread, sometimes not. Depending on how straight you have cut your piece, you'll know how straight you've cut it because each thread, if it goes all the way through, that is a straight line. So it's really easy to tell how straight you've cut it afterwards. Good. And then a couple on this side. And I still don't know yet what I'm gonna do on the top of my flannel. I'm kind of thinking Christmas tree, kind of thinking the number 25. Maybe leaving it blank. I don't think I'll do that. But there's 2 pillows, and so do I matchy match? Do I make one different than the other? All the questions. Okay, and that's good enough for me. So I have just a little bit of the frayed edge right here, all the way around. I'm gonna do that on the other one, and then I'm going to take it upstairs to iron my hem. can see I've pinned it down, and now I'm going to just go iron it to make sure it's really nice, flat and crisp, and that my pillowcase is flat and crisp. And then while I'm up there, I'm going to decide what I want on top of my pillow, on top of my flannel. So, and then I'll teach you how to do that too. Okay, so I decided on a Christmas tree on top of my flannel, and I just found an outline on the computer, printed it out, and I'm going to cut it and use that as a template. And I'm going to use some of that extra fabric I had from the pillowcase to make the white. So it's going to be white, flannel, white. What you'll notice is that in order to make sure I got the right size of flannel, I laid out my pillowcase, and I measured it out, so 18 by 18, and I put the flannel I gauged where I wanted it to be. I'm gonna do the same thing with my tree on top. So I'm going to pin it, and then I'm going to go to the sewing machine. So the idea for me is that I'm going to work smarter, not harder. I don't want to keep sewing, pinning, going back and forth. So I'm going to pin everything down, and then I'm going to sew one time. So that is the idea. But one thing I did think about, and I remeasured actually, so the pillow, the 18 by 18, you measured and cut 18 inches tall, and then 46 inches wide. And then what I'm going to do actually is, I don't want my pillow to be, when I sew it, I want it to be a little bit smaller than the 18 inches wide. So because I measured 18 inches tall, I'm going to sew 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides, so that's going to take it down to 17 inches. I'm going to do the same for the width. So sorry I didn't mention that, but that's an important thing, because otherwise it'll be kind of nice and snug up here, but then it'll be a little bit fuller out to the sides, and you don't want that. So, okay, all right, I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to get it all set up, and then we'll do the sewing. Okay, I am working smarter, not harder, so I've taken my extra fabric, I've folded it over itself, and I'm going to take my pattern, because I want 2 trees, I'm going to just cut once. And I'm not going to really pin it hard, I'm just going to kind of loosely keep it in place, and then cut away so that I have 2 Christmas trees. Okay, we have the sewing machine out. I have 2 pillows that are pinned and ready to go. So let me walk you through the steps I'm going to make. So if you stopped here and you're not going to do the embellishment, this is where you would pick up, and you would just do the sewing part of here. So I had pinned this shut at 17 inches, so I would know how wide to make it. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpin it, or not unpin it, but unfold it. And I am going to go back to those original hems that we made and pinned together and ironed. I'm going to sew that. I'm going to sew the other side. And then I am going to sew my tree on. I'm going to do my tree, and then I'm going to do my flannel, removing the pins as I go. And then I'm going to do both of them and set it aside. So basically I'm going to attach these guys, get the hem ready, and then I'll show you how we put it all together. Okay, so the flannel has been sewn on, the tree has been sewn on, and the 2 hems are already done. I chose to use a zigzag stitch for my flannel. It just kind of makes it look, I don't know, just a little bit more fun. But because we chose to fray the edges, it doesn't have to be perfect. The fraying kind of makes it a little bit more casual. So don't worry if your lines aren't straight. Don't worry if your zigzag isn't perfect. Don't worry about that. Okay, so I have my pillow. I have my pillow back on my measuring board, and I have it like that because I'm going to double check to make sure I know what sizing I'm going to use. And I've already folded over one edge, and I folded it over at the 17-inch line. And do you remember earlier I told you that when you use some fabrics, if they're thinner, the better, to be able to use kind of like a paper crease. If they're thicker, they won't really crease like that. So you can put a pin in here, and this pin is going to indicate where I want my crease to be once I turn it inside out, okay? Because in order to get that envelope closure, we need to flip this inside out. And my other one is right here. And I don't even need to fold it over itself. I'm just going to put the pin right at that measurement line. And now I'm going to flip it inside right. And so my crease, you can see that here. Or I could have used a pin, it doesn't matter. But now I'm going to fold it over. Now, when you fold it over, the part that is folded inside is the one that you're going to see on the outside. So maybe choose the side that you like the hem the best. Sometimes I have to do that, and I've been sewing for years, but otherwise it doesn't really matter which side you do first. And when you do this is where I like to get my straight edge, just to make sure that the line is straight. And once I have that, and I've kind of lined up the bottom fabric and the top fabric as best as I can, and it's looking pretty flat and straight, I can take that out, and then I'm going to take out the pin as well, but I am going to pin it down in the center. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And you'll see that I have 17 inches on this side, and I've started at 0, so that is perfect. Now, the reason I wanted 17 and I have 18 up here is because now I am done sewing on these. These aren't going to get any shorter. But up here, I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch hem up here, and I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch hem here. So 18 minus a full is 17. So it's going to be a square pillow, 17 by 17. So I'm going to take this also, put it in here. It looks pretty good, but I just want to make sure. A ruler will work just fine for this if you have a ruler. If not, you can just fudge it a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the other pillow, but where I am going to sew now, I am going to sew 1/2 inch hem down here, making sure that you have, you reverse your stitch on both corners so that it doesn't take out the stitch when you start fluffing your pillow. And then I'm going to do a 1/2 inch hem up here. When I'm done with that, I'm going to flip it inside out, and I'm going to stuff my pillow because I'm done. So I'm going to pin the other one, and I'm going to sew away, and then we're done. Okay, I have one pillow in, and I'm going to do the other one. So these pillows are synthetic, they're not feather. I used the feather inside, but the synthetic ones are outside. And you know, they're on my my front porch, but they do sometimes, you know, with sideways winds and the moisture, sometimes they do get a little bit wet. So, and when I was stuffing that last pillow, you could tell that the outside layer was disintegrating just a little bit. So this will probably be my last pillowcase for these. They lasted 3 years, and maybe 4, and now it's time to move on. So I wanted to show you the stuffing of this one because sometimes you need to do a little bit of jostling in the corners in order to make it work. So, you know, don't be afraid to wriggle and pull and do what you need to do to get that into the corner the right way. So it really fills out. And you can see 18 by 18 pillow, and it's still, I probably could have done a little bit bigger of a hem to make it a little smaller. So there we have it. 2 pillows for my outdoor Christmas porch redo.